Good morning, friends. I again welcome you for our next lecture on versification. Friends, in the last lecture, as I told you, versification is an art of writing poetry. Verse means poetry, and versification is an act or art or practice of composing something which is poetic, or what we call poetic verse. It is the construction of measure of verse or poetry, because when the poet writes poetry, he presents his ideas in a proper format, in proper construction. He tries to give shape to his expression of thoughts, ideas, emotions. And that art of construction of a poem is known as versification. Now, if you want to understand whether so and so poetry has proper versification or not, if you want to examine these things, you need to scan the whole poem. And that job of scanning by the readers, by the critics, is known as scansion. In our last lecture, we discussed that scansion means to divide the poetry into different feet by pointing out different syllables which are found in their lines, in the lines of the poem. We discussed in the last lecture that poetry is written in stanzas, and stanza means a group of lines. These lines have proper length. As the students of literature, we need to find out, we need to do the whole scanning of the poetry when we are studying it. Okay, and for doing this scanning job, first of all, you need to find out how many stanzas are there, whether the stanzas are made of 2 lines, 3 lines, 4 lines, 5 lines, or 6 lines, or 7 lines, which kind of stanza is used by the poet. Also, you have to find out, how many lines are there in each stanza. Also, you need to measure the length of the lines, each line, and the length of the lines are measured by syllables. What is a syllable? The syllable, is the smallest unit in prosody. You can say, when you want to examine the rhythm of the line or the rhythm of the word, you need to divide the words into different syllables. Okay, there are some words which are monosyllabic word, that means one syllable only. Say for example, go, do, way, come. These are the words which are monosyllabic words. Some words are disyllabic words, in which there are 2 syllables. Say for example, father. So there are 2 syllables, father. Flower, 2 syllables, disyllabic word. Above, desire, request. These are the examples of disyllabic words. There are some words which have 3 syllables. Okay, they are known as trisyllabic words. Say for example, wonderful, 3 syllables. Beautiful, 3 syllables, right? So monosyllabic, disyllabic, trisyllabic. There are some words which have 4 syllables, they are known as tetrasyllabic words. There are some words which have 5 syllables in them, they are known as pentasyllabic words. There are some words which have 6 syllables in them, they are known as hexasyllabic words. Okay, so these things we discussed in our previous lecture. We had taken one example from Emily Dickinson's poetry entitled as Hope is the Thing with Feathers, right? So we don't want to repeat that right now, and let's move on to discuss the next topic. As I told you, as the students of literature, as the students of poetry, your first job is to find out which kind of stanzas and how many stanzas are used in poetry. So, as we discussed earlier, there can be different stanzas in English poetry. If it is a stanza of 2 lines, it is known as the couplet, as you can see on the screen. If it is a stanza of 3 lines, it is known as a tercet. Again, on the screen, one example, a poem written by the romantic poet P.B. Shelley is given to you here. You can see this example. This stanza is made of 3 lines, right? Okay, so it is known as a tercet. There can be a stanza of 4 lines also. Here we have taken one example from Robert Burns' poem entitled as a red, red rose. You can see this example of 4 lines. Oh, my love is like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. Oh, my love is like a melody that's sweetly played in tune. June and tune both are rhyming, and the poet has presented his thought in a stanza of 4 lines. So you can say this is the example of a quatrain. There is another type of stanza in English poetry which is made of 5 lines, and such stanzas are known as cinquain. Here, if you want the example of such cinquains, you can Google John Donne's poem, Hymn to God, my God in my sickness. Okay, there can be another type of stanza which is made of 6 lines. It is known as sixain or a sestet. Okay, if there are 7 lines in a stanza, it is called a heptameter stanza. If there are 8 lines in a stanza, it is called an octave. Okay, so these are the things. Now let's discuss the lines, because stanza is the biggest unit in poetry, then the smaller unit is lines. Now these lines which are used in stanzas by the poet, they have a proper length, okay, and you have to measure the length of the lines. The length of the lines is measured by syllables and by the use of feet. What are the feet? Let's see. Feet is, in English prosody, there are mainly 4 meters. If in one line 1 meter is used, you can say it is a 1 foot line. I repeat it again. In English prosody, in English poetry, there are mainly 4 meters. Okay, and if 1 meter is used in one line, then you can say it is a monometer line. Clear? Now what is a meter? That we will discuss later, but right now you just remember that, say for example, the poet uses one line, writes one line in which there is only 1 meter. You can say there is 1 foot, and that 1 foot line is known as a monometer line. If there are 2 feet in the single line, it is called a diameter line. If there are 3 feet in the same line, it is called a trimeter line. If there are 4 feet in the line, it is known as a tetrameter line. And if there are 5 feet in the same line, it is called a pentameter line. Now, pentameter line is very popular among the poets of English literature, because many poets of the 16th century, 17th century, they have written their literature, their poetry in blank verse. And in blank verse, this is a requirement that if you want to write poetry in blank verse, you must have pentameter lines. And a pentameter line is one which has 5 feet in the same line. Okay, so that is very common in among the English poets. Sometimes there is a longer line in which there are 6 feet used by the poet. Okay, if 6 feet are found in the same line, it is known as a hexameter line. It is also known as Alexandrine line, okay, or hexameter line. In the same manner, if there are 7 feet, the longest line in English poetry, if there are 7 feet presented by the poet, then it is known as a heptameter line. Again, go further. If there are 8 meters, it is called an octometer line. If there are 9 feet in the line, it is called a monometer line. Now, the question is, what is a feet? The question is, what a feet is. Feet means the terms that describe the number of syllables and pattern of stresses. I repeat it again. It is there on the screen also. Feet means the terms that describe the number of syllables and pattern of stresses or vowel length in a foot. Now let's take examples of feet in English poetry to understand this. The first feet in English poetry, which is very popular among the English poets, is iambus. Iambus is a feat which is made of 2 syllables. What is a syllable? A syllable is the division of the words. Okay, if only 2 syllables are found in one line, but that means a very short line, only 2 syllables are found in the line, and if the first syllable is a weaker syllable in comparison to the second one, okay, if the first syllable is unstressed and if the second syllable is stressed, you can see on the screen I have put some marks for these syllables. If there is a mark like this, half a circle, it is called an unstressed syllable, a weak syllable. And there is another mark like a dash. It is called the sign of a stressed syllable. So the point is, what is iambus in English poetry? Iambus is made of 2 syllables in which the first syllable is unstressed and the second syllable is stressed. Okay, you can see here I have given you an example. about. This word about has two syllables. Syllable number 1 is a and syllable number 2 is bout. About. When you speak this word about, then what happens that the first syllable is unstressed. It is a weaker syllable. And the second syllable bout is stressed. It is a stronger syllable. So you speak it like about. You can't say about. About is wrong. The correct pronunciation is about. So the second syllable is stressed, the first one is unstressed. So this word about is known as the example of an iambus. In poetry also, the poets use such rhythm in their poetry. Like just now we took one example from Robert Burns. My love is like a red, red rose. Now in this line what happens? My is unstressed, love is stress. So unstressed, stress, that is one iambus, is like unstressed, stress. Second iambus, red. Third syllable, third iambus, red rose. Fourth iambus. So my love is like a red, red rose. Here, unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stress. This is how the rhythm of that poem, of that line goes. So you can say it's a rising rhythm. From down you go up. My love is like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. My love is like a melody that's newly played in tune. So you can say from down you go up, from down, up, down, up. This is how the rhythm goes on in the poetry. So you can say that poetry is iambic poetry. You can say there is iambic meter. Iambic meters are used in that poem. Okay, now let's take another example of another feat in English poetry, and that is trochee. Trochee. Now trochee, you can see on the screen, you can see there are two signs I have written. The first sign is that of stress, like this, and the second sign is that of unstress, like this, half circle. Okay, so that means what is a trochee? A trochee is a foot, or it is a meter in which the first syllable is stressed and the second syllable is unstressed. Such rhythm is actually known as the falling rhythm. From up you go down. First there is stronger syllable, next there is a weaker syllable. Let's take one example of trochee. In trochee, you can see on the screen pattern, P-A-T-T-E-R-N. This word pattern, there are two syllables, pay, turn. Okay, so the first syllable is stressed, second syllable is unstressed. So you should pronounce this word as pattern, right? You can't say pattern, is wrong, because second syllable is not stressed, first one is stressed. Same is the case with another example called father. So fa is stressed, the is unstressed. So you go down, father. Okay, so this is called a trochee. There is another important meter or foot in English poetry, which is known as anapest. Anapest is not made of two syllables. Anapest is made of three syllables, in which the first two syllables are unstressed and the third syllable is stressed. So the rhythm is unstressed, unstressed, stressed. Okay, so when such three syllables come together, it makes one anapest. If one anapest is there in poetry, you can say it is mono-anapest line. If there are two anapests in the line, you can say it is di-anapest line. If there are five anapests in that particular line, you can say it is penta-anapest line, right? So first two syllables are unstressed and the third one is stressed. Here I have given you one example, the word understand, right? Understand. These are the three syllables, understand. So when you speak this word in English, the last syllable is stressed, the first two are unstressed. So you speak it like understand, understand, right? The last stand is stressed here. So you can say this is a nice example of anapest. Another important foot or meter in English poetry is dactyl. Dactyl, D-A-C-T-Y-L, and dactyl is just opposite to anapest. In anapest, the first two are unstressed, the last one is stressed. In dactyl, the first one is stressed and the following remaining two are unstressed. So you have first stressed, then unstressed, and then unstressed. You can see on the screen the signs of dactyl. Okay. One example I have taken here, credible. Credible. Now here this word has three syllables. Okay. Which three? Credible. Credible. So the first cry is stressed when you are speaking this word. Cry is stressed, D and bull are unstressed. So how do you speak it? Credible. Credible. So it's a falling rhythm. Credible. From up you go down. Credible. Anapest has a rising rhythm. Okay. Iambus has a rising rhythm. Two syllables. The first one is unstressed. The second one is stressed. So iambus has a rising rhythm. In the same manner, Traki has a falling rhythm. It has two syllables, but the first one is stressed, the second one is unstressed. So falling rhythm. Anapest, again a rising rhythm. Okay. Unstressed, unstressed, stress. So it is like this, and just opposite to that there is a dactyl. In dactyl there are three syllables. The first one is stressed, second and third are unstressed. So it has a falling rhythm. So credible, it is an example of dactyl. Now these four, iambus, trochy, anapest and dactyl, these four are the major feet or major meters of English poetry. But sometimes, just for variation, the poets use spondy also. Spondy means a foot, a meter which has only two syllables, just like iambus and talkie, but here both the syllables are stressed, both syllables are strong syllables, right? So that is called a spondee. An example of a spondee you can see on the screen. When you say no way, when you speak like this, no way. So now is stressed and way is also stressed. Both syllables are stressed at the same time. So you can say it is an example of a spondee. In the same manner, there is another foot or meter which is not commonly used by the poets, but this again is used as a variation to bring a kind of variety of rhythm in the poem. The poets use this kind of feat, which is known as pyrrhic, right? It is known as pyrrhic. Now pyrrhic again is made of two syllables, and just opposite to a spondee, pyrrhic has two syllables, but both the syllables are unstressed, right? Both syllables are weak syllables, right? An example, when you say when you speak like this, so you are not stressing anything. You do not give stress to your words, to your syllables. So when both the syllables are unstressed, it is called a pyrrhic, right? So that is all you should know about scansion and versification. Let's go up and let's revise the whole discussion. Versification is found. Versification, the word comes from the word verse. Verse means poetry, and versification is an art, or it is an act of composing poetry, composing a verse. That is known as versification. In versification, the poets need some techniques, some technical knowledge of composition. Okay, so what technical knowledge? The technical knowledge of the rhythm of the words, the technical knowledge of the use of meters, use of feet, use of stanzas. Okay, so as the students of poetry, when we want to examine whether there is proper versification in that poetry or not, you need to do scanning of that poetry. That scanning is also known as scansion, and that includes 4-5 things. What 4-5 things? Number 1, find out which stanza it is. Which stanzas are used by the poet, whether it is a couplet, a tercet, a quatrain, a cinquain. Okay, so different types of stanzas are there. Which types of stanza is used by the poet? Number 1. Number 2, you find out what is the length of the lines, how many syllables are there used in the lines, and how many feet are used. There can be 3 iambus in one line, there can be 5 iambus in one line. So you have to count the syllables, find out the rhythm, which one is stressed and which one is unstressed, find out the rhythm of the syllables, and then you decide which feet is used in that particular line and how many feet are used, so that you can, at the end, you can say that this line has 4 feet. That's why it is called a tetrameter line. If the line has 5 feet, it is called a pentameter line. So this is how you have to decide which kind of a line is used by the poet. And the last thing you should do while scanning the poetry is to find out the rhyming words, rhythm of the poetry. Rhyming means the last words of each line. They are rhyming with one another. So you have to find out what is the rhyming scheme used by the poets, in poetry. So friends, this is all about versification I wanted to tell you. If you have any doubts or questions, feel free to ask me. Thank you. Thank you very much.